Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Blumenthal. I believe Senator Blackburn, who was here diligently early, is now on remotely, and then we go to Senator Padilla, and I think he should be fine for voting. I guess that's my
Okay.
promise. Okay, Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you all. What an interesting panel, and I really appreciate the testimony that you got to us and that you came to give today. Mr. Gaynor, I think I want to start with you because your organization has really put up a lot of attention on bias in the mainstream media and how big news and big tech team up and filter the news and really take control of what you hear and what you see when it comes to news. So when I go to Tennessee, I hear a lot about this from Tennesseans, and they don't like it. They feel that their views are not being represented, and that they're very concerned about if they can or cannot trust mainstream media. So we thank you for the work that you're doing on this front, but I'd like for you to touch on what small news outlets are doing that will help to combat that bias, what you all are seeing that they're doing. I think it's important that they do that. So if you will just very quickly touch on what are the best place efforts for combating this bias from the coziness of big tech and big news.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Senator. We've seen examples all through even recent the presidential election of the problems of big tech and then followed up by big journalism not covering major issues. And it's fair to note the difference between, corporate media, which is what, you're talking about there, and several of the people on the panel right now. Local journalism is something I think we all love and is, the heart of a community. But on a national level, yes, there's incredible bias from the traditional media, the legacy media, and working hand in hand with the same people that I think we all want to beat up on right now with Google and Facebook and others. And so the scary idea here of creating a cartel or whatever you want to call it, some sort of organized unit where the major players in journalism, who the Washington Post and New York Times, who didn't stand up during the Hunter Biden story and cover that story while New York Post was being censored, that they're going to stand up and represent the little.
Okay, let me jump in there because see, it is what we want to do is make certain that local news, that you're going to give local news what they need to be competitive, that you're not going to cut them off. And I think everyone would agree with that. But what we don't want to do is do something that is going to have the unintended consequence of the reverse effect to that. So, Mr. Francis, let me come to you. Do you think that companies like Facebook, like Instagram, YouTube would stand to benefit from an antitrust exemption? And what bad behaviors could they get away with if they did get that exemption?
So my understanding, Senator, is that this proposed exemption would work the other way around. So in the event that this were created, two things would happen. So the first is that the most immediate beneficiaries would be the participating media companies, obviously including some very large conglomerates as well as the smaller publishers that we're talking about. And certainly the cartel overcharge that would emerge from agreements on prices would be paid in the first instance by Google, Facebook, and then transmitted, most likely in the form of higher prices for advertising, down the chain to consumers.
Okay, so basically what you see is more hands in the pot for the money that is there, adding extra layers of fees. So in the end, you're going to have the originator of the content gets no more, but you're going to have the conglomerates reaping more profit off of that content. Am I following what you're saying there?
That's exactly correct. There would be
Okay.
a new
So let
monopoly
me
charge
ask
at the
you
top.
this. Yes, let me ask you this. The music industry, when it comes to royalties and some really tricky royalty issues, what we've done through the years is look at how they operate under consent decrees. And a few years ago, we had to work diligently creating the Music Modernization Act. It's something that was very important to a lot of my Tennessee constituents. So do you see something like the music consent decrees being needed if Congress grants an antitrust exemption?
So my sense is, and I am not an expert, it's been many years since I worked on music licensing and the process under the consent decrees that you mentioned. But I'll say a couple things. So thing number one, I think that has been an extremely complicated, difficult, and controversial process for a very long time in a way that I think would exemplify some of the difficulties if we were to embark on a similar price setting mechanism here, for example, with a compulsory arbitration mechanism. And thing number two, many of the music licensing examples are distinctively situated because there's a compulsory licensing obligation. In other words, the licensor has a statutory obligation to issue the license. And obviously that has all kinds of complicated effects for how you want to set up your system. And I don't think anybody is talking about creating a statutory obligation here on news publishers to issue a license. But I am really not an expert on music licensing in particular, so everything that I say about it should be taken with some caution.
I appreciate your candor. Thank you all. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to begin by